I would like to welcome everybody in general. So I'm not in agenda, so you should keep the agenda up to agenda. But anyway, thanks to cooperation with the Metrex, we have the real pleasure and honor to have the meeting today. So welcome everybody from Poland, and I will of course give the floor to the welcome introduction, Mr. President of Metrex, Jakub Mazur. Bardzo proszę.
Dziękuję, panie pośle. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor always to be with you, and welcome from Wrocław, the snowy city, today. But today's meeting is very important, not only for my city, but also for all members of Metrex, for all members that are united around metropolitan issues. Urban and rural discussion is about to happen today, and I have high hopes about quality and some pragmatical approach to our today's meetings. We have resilient urban and rural transformation for a climate neutral future, and title of our today's meeting. And these few words are crucial as a synthesis of our certain philosophy of approach and our direction for metropolitan areas. All of us are repeating that we are living in difficult times, but it is true, because we are facing demanding needs and those kind of challenges, very urgent one in terms of becoming neutral, becoming members of this European Union that is alone with climate neutrality, that comes with those solutions in the area of energy production and consumption, that meets all those demands of our inhabitants, authorities, and people that are very concerned about present situation. And because of these demanding times, we strongly believe that only with cities and metro regions we are able to succeed. And also because of this, we believe that European Union have some financial and legal instruments and can support us to bring this sustainable development. This meeting, therefore, is more than important to all of us. And as a president of Metrex, but also as a deputy mayor of Wrocław, the large Polish city, I'd like to welcome you. And I'd like to thank all of you who prepared this meeting, who work under agenda. Special thanks, of course, to our friend, Mr. Jan Olbrich, for his commitment and invitation. Today's meeting and today's meeting agenda is shaped by previous one. During last quarter of 2021, we had opportunity to join many important meetings. To name a few, the most important were our European Weeks of Regions in October, where we try to show our mission statement, but also try to present this practical approach and show those best examples how to move from policies to actions. We will have opportunity to get to know some of those examples today because of our special guest, Ani Sinemaki, I'm sorry for pronunciation, Deputy Mayor of Helsinki, but also Tomasz Kiewit, the member of board in Metrex, representing today region of Stuttgart. Then we have in November very important and crucial meetings during Assembly of Eurocity. During this meeting, we're trying to discuss about role of cities. More than 200 most important and crucial cities of Europe. We're discussing about transformation, climate adaptation, but also role of becoming or creating resilient Europe. And the last, but in my opinion, most significant meeting took place in Porto, Portugal, also in November, where we had opportunity to meet Mrs. Elisa Ferreira, the Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms, and she called upon Metropolitan region during this meeting. She called upon metropolitan regions and cities to come forward with some specific proposals that address these demanding times, but address also all those challenges to become resilient and climate neutral Europe by 2050. Today with us is Xavier Tiana, representing EMA, European Metropolitan Authorities, but also Metropolitana de Barcelona. Welcome, Xavier. It's always good to see you. What is important also, according to this meeting, Elisa Ferreira showed us that there are already existing some instruments that we should focus on, and we probably should use. Those four fundamental instruments are new Bauhaus, of course, post-pandemic recovery funds, cohesion programs, but also European Urban Initiative that funds innovative actions. And as a pretext, but always and only together with our partners, we'd like to answer Mrs. Ferreira call by proposing, which is very important for us, a common metropolitan vision for Europe 2050. It will be presented by Felipe Ferreira, Łukasz Medeksza, and also mentioned Xavier Tiana from EMA. This vision includes some kind of investment propositions and includes all relevant stakeholders. So we see, because we need to see urban intergroup at the European Parliament as an essential partner to establish this vision. And because of this, I'd like to ask you on behalf of all those people gathered here today, but also on behalf of inhabitants, millions of inhabitants of metro regions, cities, that are shaping new Europe, to support us, to be a part of this great team that is trying to have this practical, pragmatical approach and to come up with answer to Elisa Ferreira call with some practical proposals. And in this term, it would be great if Urban Intergroup would prepare some kind of special report of metropolitan regions and areas in perspective 2030. And of course, we declare our support with our resources, with our time, with our assistance all the time. But this document would help us to make another steps. We all know that we are working as a group, and only as a group, as a powers of many cities, many metro regions, also at political level, we can be successful. And that is, according to Franz Timmermans' words, that is a special momentum that we are in. And because of this, I have very high hopes about results of our today's meetings. And I wish you all very fruitful discussions, and very soon next steps and meetings together in order to create some added value, but some big change that can refer and indicate all of us. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And now I would like to propose to give the floor to our Vice President of the Intergroup. By the way, to this who don't know, Fabienne Keller he used to be, among all the different positions, also the mayor of Strasbourg. So very big experience with the city of metropolitan area. And since I think for some days, she had a very important new position. What is important for our Intergroup, by the way, she was elected the questor of the parliament. So I think that for this who doesn't know, the questor is a very high position in the parliament, responsible for all the financial. Congratulate Fabienne to become the questor of European Parliament, and I would like to give her the floor. Fabienne, c'est à toi.
Merci. Thank you. Dzień dobry. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be with you this morning, and thank you for your introduction. Jan is our dynamic president of the Intergroup Urban, and even the virus didn't stop him, with the help of Casia, to organize events, because we believe in the strength of the network of cities. So thank you to be there. Thank you particularly to you, Jakub Mazur, the president of Metrex and deputy mayor of Warsaw. I went 2 times in Warsaw last year.
Oh, Wrocław. Wrocław. I would just correct you.
Wrocław
is
Varsovie.
Is not less important than Warsaw, but beautiful city south of Poland.
Sorry, last year, and I am very happy to be to have the honor to introduce this meeting concerning a metropolitan vision for Europe 2050, with a specific highlight on the issues of climate neutral future. We know that more than 70% of the population in Europe is living in cities. So we are probably the most urbanized area in the world. So urban policies are, of course, strategic and at the center of the challenges we are facing. There are environmental, those challenges, but also social, economic, cultural, and educational. It's clearly at the level of the metropole and the cities that we can and that we must move to achieve ambitious objectives for the climate neutral Europe by 2050. And I was thinking of you. I don't know what's the temperature in Poland, but you need heating, as we need in Strasbourg, because it's less than 0. So it's quite a challenge to, give comfort to people, but in a carbon neutral way, in a very efficient way. You were nice to recall that I was mayor of Strasbourg. I was involved in environmental issues because they are very important here, and we are helped by the example of Switzerland and Germany, where they apply very interesting techniques and experiments. But I am sure the interventions of the deputy mayors of Helsinki, Lisbon, Barcelona, and you, Mr. President, will help us find good ideas, and also, as you said, practical, efficient, that can be implemented in reality, not only in theory, at the same time giving good living conditions and social conditions to our citizens. We need, of course, as you said already, strong European policies in issues like housing, that is central, for regional help also, because the issues are not the same in the different areas of Europe, but we need the big push, big help to invest in the future. Transport is a main issue. May I share one of my passions, which is in Europe to restart night trains that are not necessarily fast trains, but they are very efficient in terms of environment. But we have, of course, many other issues like waste, water management, that are very important in the environmental areas. As Urban Intergroup, we try to facilitate the exchange of experiences and good practices. So this is really how you, Mr. President of Metrex, built this seminar today with commonly with Jan as president of the urban group. So we are very happy, and I am happy to be on the side of Jan in the European Parliament to keep alive this lobby of the city and this presence, this capacity of proposals of the cities. So I am very delighted to introduce, I was happy to introduce this debate because you represent the network of European metropolitan regions and areas. So thank you, and I give back the floor to the moderator or to you, Jan. You said I was questa. I forgot to say that Jan is very important in the European budget. So as you know, policies, sectoral policies are great, but the budget is the time to decide. So he is the important person at the right time, in the right position. So we are very happy to make that at the disposal of our networks of cities in Europe. I think cities are a nice place where we can build friendship also, because we share the same issues and the same défis in French, the same difficult things to do. So I'm very glad that we can work together in a very constructive way today. Jan?
Yes, thank you, merci. Just for the participants, before giving the floor to the speakers, some very short remarks. First remark to Fabienne, that Wrocław, where Mr. Mazur is from, is sharing the very similar history. It's complicated history of between Poland and Germany. And I think Alsace has also very complicated history. So I think this is one of the ways. Second, that what is important for the participants, that we, as the vice president of the Intergroup, we are from different political groups. I think this is also very important, that we are working together to the cities. And even if we are coming from completely different political families, it shows that what unites us is the real interest in the cities and urban areas and metropolitan areas. So just to, maybe it's quite clear for you, but it's not always the case in the parliament. So our Intergroup is a really cross-party. And now I think that this is the time to enter. It's not very polite and politically correct, so that after the official introduction, we say, let's work now. So no, I think the work starts with the official invitation, because this is in fact our work as politicians. But now I think that let's go to the concrete examples and sharing the experience. And I would now pass the floor and for the moderating the next part to Henk Bowman, Secretary General of Metrix. So Henk, I'm just passing the moderation to you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you very much, Fabienne and Jacob, for your good words and nice words. Indeed, we are very happy to have this exchange with you, and it's not the first time. And that's what I will report from. I will report back a bit from the session at the Week of the Regions we had in October. And it is also, there will also be two, let's say, contributions from Helsinki and Stuttgart later on. And then we go to the vision with Lucas Medexka and Xavier Tatiana. First, maybe we had this EU Week of Regions session in October. And what we did was bringing together, let's say, a number of members to examine the most effective green projects and initiatives and discuss solutions that look beyond the pandemic to achieve a green recovery. So we were really looking at very practical projects, actually cities who are already ahead of the game and doing things because we have no time to waste. We are almost too late. So Metrix members in this case were Helsinki, Gdansk, Wrocław, Stuttgart region, Torino and Nuremberg. And they presented let's say, how they define their responsibilities to support citizens, civil society and businesses to translate green policies into action. And I think it was Jan Olbrecht yourself who said, when we think about the big issues from climate to mobility, these are not just problems for big cities. And what we see in these metropolitan regions is that indeed they do not only represent big cities, but also, let's say, the rural areas. And that differs very much. But for example, Torino is a metropolitan area which has vast rural areas which go up into the mountains, up into the Alps. Lombardia region is the same. I see Adriana Mai here represented from Lombardia. let's say those are regions which are absolutely not only looking at these urban issues, but let's say the combination of urban and rural. And we think that's important. And by the way, we also think that there are solutions when they, let's say, work more closely together, when there are more actions combined in these areas. We invited metropolitan regions and cities who are working towards concrete solutions. So that's what I said. And then almost all case studies we heard included the idea of implementing projects, big and small, to change behavior. That's an important one, and therefore have a bigger and more long-lasting impact. This was evident in the projects such as Wrocław Tap Water Campaign, which seeks to reduce the use of plastic bottles. It was evident in Stuttgart region's focus on the enhancement of the natural landscape, which aims to boost associated health benefits for people. And that is what we will hear back from, also from Thomas Kiewit later on. And then Helsinki, a result of the energy challenge that served to highlight the role of authorities as designers of systems that can enable change. So they were all really looking at very practical and close to people solutions. Helsinki outlined the lengths it had gone to in order to generate and pull new ideas on reversing climate change through its €1 million energy challenge. They set out a competition, the Helsinki Energy Challenge, and offered, let's say, $1 million for the best ideas that came out of that. But however, aside of the practical function, this will play in a city heated by coal. Helsinki is going further by saying that the expertise reaped of little use is not shared with others who are facing similar problems. And there were 252 solutions that were submitted to that competition. And the Helsinki deputy mayor said it's a concrete proof that there are solutions available. In that sense, the technique is there. We need decisions, we need, let's say, cooperation on this, and then we can do it. So it is actually not rocket science anymore, but we have, let's say, solutions that can work. Nuremberg was interesting because it's transforming policies into actions by inspiring others to help fund a local climate pact, which is designed to deliver on the Paris goals. This approach, they say, will share responsibility whilst delivering projects that investors can be proud of. And meanwhile, in Wrocław, who is here present, they are enabling cooperation between businesses, research, and public agencies to bring ideas for fruition. This approach was launched the world's first, and that's a difficult word, perovskite solar cell factory. So they are, let's say, also working on solutions for solutions. It was also clear that health is a very important driver, and it goes hand in hand with the green recovery. It's often an issue, it's often an aspect that is named, let's say, and to convince, let's say, people that it's not only for the sake of having different energy sources, but of course also to create, let's say, an environment which is healthier to live in. I think Wrocław, Stuttgart, Torino, and Gdansk each shared details of projects that had been designed to improve the natural environment. And behind each of these projects was an underlying human benefit, whether mental or physical. In Wrocław, we heard about educating young citizens to grow produce, while the metropolitan city of Torino was rejuvenating public squares and social housing to create a healthier and greener environment in which to live. In Gdansk, the regeneration of large former port was leading the city's charge for recovery of the pandemic. So we saw that, let's say, the discussions that were held there to go through those changes was very much helped as well, supported by the idea of health, the component of health. And that's, of course, what everyone thinks is important. And I would say that if there's anything across a political party, then health, I think, is. So we saw that, let's say, these metropolitan regions, again, and of course, I'm the one who should say, but I'm absolutely convinced that metropolitan regions and areas are the optimum level at which urban and rural challenges can be met. And they sit close to their citizens, the local politicians, and they have often the best capacity and resource to tackle these issues. But also they oversee the opportunities for both big urbanized areas as well as rural areas. And we have seen that, let's say, in various examples, and we are experiencing that every day with our members. A green recovery, I think, was also a conclusion. And green recovery will require changing behaviors as much as physical interventions. It's absolutely key that we let's say, convince or get people with us, let's say, in changing their behavior to make things done. And that's not an easy one. That can be quite a tough one. But it's not only about numbers, it's also about effects, it's about children, it's about where to raise your children, etc. The ideas to meet green goals are out there, but the willingness to adopt and to indeed share them must come next. So that's, of course, what we would like to work on now, from now on. Health is an important driver, as I said, behind green recovery projects to get people on board, and inviting other stakeholders to invest in climate-related projects is a concrete way to bring action and inspire future change. That's what we, for instance, saw also in Helsinki, where they had a very broad representation of the civil society, of business sector, who was, let's say, helping them, supporting them. And in that sense, I think it is, of course, obvious for us all, I think, that we can't do it on our own. And then, let's say, last but not least, and that was the Ani Sinemäki, Deputy Mayor of Helsinki. You know, we want to clean up our house, he said, but at the same time, we want to take seriously our global responsibility. Of course, we can't only look at our own little place, but we want to look at other places as well. We want to work alongside other cities. It makes me think of the former mayor of Amsterdam, Eberhard van der Laan, who once discussed, let's say, or promoted the responsible city. He said, if the neighbors are happy, then we are happy as well. And I think that's an interesting sort of lead. As a network, we are able, let's say, to accelerate on change, and we bring together the front runners and the excellent followers. And in that sense, we have made a mission statement which said that we should focus on this capacity building, on exchange, and also on accelerating, let's say, actions. We need to speed up because we have no time to waste. And that goes for our network, and we work very closely with colleagues from EMA, who are here as well, the European Metropolitan Authorities. We indeed, as Jacob Mazur said, we were at the Porto conference, the forum of EMA, and I think it's there that indeed the EU Commissioner Elisa Ferreira triggered us to now come really with big steps forward. So we will, let's say, introduce you to this initiative of a European Metropolitan Vision for 2015. But first, I would like to ask my colleague Stephen Gallagher to show the Helsinki video. The mayor of Helsinki, unfortunately, could not be with us, but she is with us, let's say, more or less like you, but it is recorded. So please, Stephen, could you start, let's say, the Helsinki video?
We live in the middle of an unbefore-seen crisis, climate crisis, a crisis that requires concrete action at every level of society. Cities are at the forefront of this battle, and we, the decision makers of today, we have a very important responsibility in solving the crisis, bearing the responsibility. Helsinki wants to be one of the forefront cities in providing solutions to the fight against climate change. We want to clean up our own house, but at the same time, we want to take seriously our global responsibility. We want to work alongside other cities and make sure our learnings and solutions are shared with others. Cities are the drivers of change. We in Helsinki want impact and action. As we just announced in our new city strategy, City of Helsinki is committed to be carbon neutral by 2030. We want to reduce the emissions from 80% from the 1990 level. We decided to speed up our work as we think we can do it. And we also believe we can do more than what is expected from us in the common global fight. We needed to do better, and we need to do it fast. As one of the coolest capitals in the world, heating our city is one of the major concerns in Helsinki. More than half of the emissions of our city generate from our heating system. We still burn coal, but we are committed to get rid of those emissions. We will decarbonize our heating. Helsinki Energy Challenge was our unique approach to openly find the best sustainable urban heating solutions. Solutions that are sustainable not only in 10 years from now, but in the decades to come. The whole process was a unique and eye-opening experience for us, and we are now working hard with the next steps. We got total 252 solutions from teams with more than 1,500 innovators from 35 different countries. This is a concrete proof that there are solutions available. We just need to act, and most importantly, need to act in cooperation with several different stakeholders. We need systemic change. As we all know, the whole energy sector is in transition, as it should be. And we, in different cities all around the world, need to learn from others on how we cities should act in this transition phase. Members of Parliament, we also need you to support the needed action, be it legislation, be it financial support. In sharing our learnings and best practices, international city networks like Metrox and Eurocities are doing extremely valuable work in advancing the city's cooperation in sharing practical examples and experiences on climate action and urban and regional planning. Thank you for that work to you all.
There you go. Thank you, Helsinki, from Anni Sinemäki, Deputy Mayor of Helsinki. I would like now to give the floor to Thomas Kiewit from the Verband Region Stuttgart. And he will also show a presentation, I believe. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning from Stuttgart. I brought a few examples what metropolitan areas can do to be game changers towards a green, just and productive Europe. And I'd like to share my screen with you and show you a few examples of what we are doing to contribute to this development. So Stuttgart region is a typical metropolitan area. We have many peoples, we have a strong economy, we have a complex administrative situation. We are at the center of cultural research and education. We provide gateway infrastructure and are proud of the high quality of our open spaces. So we provide services for a huge hinterland, as well as all the colleagues do in the Metrox network for their hinterland. And we see a lot of changes and challenges, and we are absolutely convinced that we can solve these challenges way better when we work together. So this is true for climate protection, as well as the adaptation to climate changes, for the ongoing transformation process in the industry, for the demographic changes. Affordable housing has already been mentioned. That's a huge challenge, especially here in Stuttgart. We have to provide the infrastructure for sustainable mobility. And of course, we need to maintain our open spaces for agriculture, biodiversity, as well as recreation purposes. So all these goals cannot be achieved by isolated approaches of a single city. Cities are not islands, they need to cooperate, and the metropolitan area are the appropriate level to tackle the challenges I have mentioned. I would like to give you 5 examples what we are doing in terms of metropolitan scale projects that are necessary to move towards the right direction. So first of all, to maintain sustainable energy supply is absolutely crucial. So to stay on this track, we have introduced a hydrogen strategy with a regional funding scheme of about 20 million euros to trigger the new fuel industry. And we have various projects that are focused on producing green hydrogen, distribute this new stuff, and trigger pilot actions for the use of hydrogen. So the core asset of this project is hydrogen pipeline along the River Neckar. You can see in the picture here as a backbone for the distribution. And of course, we want to guarantee the supply for our industrial companies, and we want to support the introduction of new engines for cars, for heavy transport, and even for rail. That's for our automotive industry, which sees a significant change away from the combustion engine. That's an absolutely important asset. Madame Keller mentioned already the night trains. And of course, it's important that we have faster trains if we want to connect Europe. What we are doing here within the TEN project and with the Stuttgart 21 project, we are closing the gap of one of the main lines for Europe, the connection from Paris to Budapest, from west to east. So these are the tracks where night games can actually run on. So we have a constructive underground station here. We have an absolutely wide-going upgrade of the railway network. And we are aiming at to reduce travel times for long distance travelers as well as for commuters within the area of Stuttgart region. And that's also an important example how infrastructure and transport facilities can enlarge the catchment areas of metropolitan cores. And that means bringing more urban services to a way bigger hinterland. So that's also, in terms of cohesion, a very important asset. And of course, we trying to make our tracks as efficient as possible. And we are doing so in introducing a new digital control system that allows more trains running on the same tracks, that allows more people traveling on the rolling stock and on the tracks available. Also already mentioned was the importance of affordable housing. And I think it's obvious that if we have to cater for people, if we want to provide affordable housing, this has to be in the first place in the city centers where all the urban amenities are available and where also public transport is available. So we are lucky enough to provide an area of 85 hectares where now we have rail yards to maintain the rolling stock of the Deutsche Bahn, and this will all be urban development in the close future. And that's also an important example how urban development improves the overall quality of life for the people living in the cities and working here. And it goes without saying that it's very important that we have green cities. Green cities are livable cities, and so we are putting a huge effort also to improve the quality of our open spaces. And we have seen during the pandemic situation that these areas are crucial for safe and healthy living conditions. We know since long that for most people living here in our area, the green infrastructure, the quality of open spaces is the main asset, the things that people like most in Stuttgart region, far above culture, far above jobs, far above shopping opportunities. Open spaces are the most important asset if you ask the people. So we try to improve this with an own funding scheme. And of course, we need to also take care of the outcomes of climate change. And adapting to climate change means also that we bring new uses into open spaces for flood protection and for reducing heat islands in the urban core area. And of course, it's obvious that we need to maintain the overall quality of open spaces, even if we have to develop settlement structures and if we have to build up in more places, the overall quality has to stay the same, or even better, has to be improved. And we heard about a new Bauhaus initiative. We are especially proud about this because what you can see here 100 years ago, that was where the Bauhaus actually came into place with the Weissenhof-Siedlung, a huge example for modernism with buildings from Le Corbusier and other well-known architects. So in a 100 years tradition, we want to ask the same questions the colleagues and architects asked 100 years ago. How do we want to live in the future, and how can we provide the housing that's necessary for these changes? So we are applying with the IBA, the International Building Exhibition in Stuttgart region, with the Chamber of Architects, with the well-known universities and School of Architecture, to have a lighthouse demonstrator for the new European Bauhaus initiative. So I think that that's especially important, because if you want to convince people to have a better building, have more density, have more affordability in the urban areas, you need to come up with good examples. And I think this initiative can be a very huge step forward towards this direction. So In a nutshell, metropolitan areas are the place where plans come true, and the metropolitan areas are the right level, and they are capable to do so, to bring plans into action. But of course, it would be helpful with some more funding and support from the European level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas Kiewit from Stuttgart. We had the pleasure in October 2019 to visit Stuttgart and to also see, let's say, where the city was at that moment. And that was absolutely impressive. And I can recommend to visit. I would like now to ask Stephen to show our own video, Metro's video, for 2 minutes, and then we will go to the Metropolitan Vision for 2050.
I want Europe to become the first climate neutral continent in the world by 2050.
The future calls for a new energy. An energy that will develop a productive, healthy, inclusive and sustainable Europe. The future calls for people who believe in this energy, to share their knowledge and experience in overcoming urban and rural challenges, to improve the performance of Europe and create better places for people to live in. The future calls for experts and leaders to work together across borders, to enable integrated thinking to cope with complex challenges. The future calls for new approaches that accelerate urgent transitions in all European regions and areas. The future calls for stronger focus on the potential of regions and areas to improve the lives of all Europeans. We are Metrix, the network for European metropolitan regions and areas. Only together, we can make an inclusive, competitive future a reality. Join the Metrix network.
There we are, joining the Metrix network. Well, join us in, let's say, also the next steps we would like to take. And I think what the video showed was using the word energy, but not only energy as energy to heat your house, but also energy to get people alongside and to move on with this very important changes we need to address the challenges. So I would like now to let's say give the floor to Lukáš Medečka from Wrocław. He's also a member in our managing committee, in our board. And this is actually the moment where we also will look forward and open more or less, let's say, the ideas we have now to then discuss later on at 10 o'clock. So please, Lukáš, take the floor. There you are.
Thank you, Hank. Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's a big honor to have an occasion to speak at the Intergroup meeting. We have just recently initiated our work on the Metropolitan Vision for Europe 2050. I'll try to explain why do we want to have such a vision, what we are planning to do to shape it, and who would we like to invite to shape it with us. We would like to complete the vision by early summer 2022. We want to convince several other metropolitan and municipal European networks to become its stakeholders. We plan to present it to the European Commission, responding to the offer mentioned earlier by Jakub Mazur, the offer presented by Elise Ferreira from the Commission in Porto in November last year at the EMA conference. I will return to that offer in a while. But first, let me explain why do we want to have such a vision. The main reason is that we all deeply feel that the role of metropolitan areas and metropolitan regions is growing. They already have been, or they will become, the main actors, arenas, themes, and beneficiaries of various European policies, including such big ones as the European Green Deal or the digital transition. We are also very inspired by the achievements and the know-how of many metropolitan areas across Europe, among them the so-called ITIs as the instrument of the EU cohesion policy. This is also our own experience in Poland, and especially in my region of Lower Silesia. We are very proud of our ITIs, and just now we are fighting for maintaining an appropriate level of funding for those ITIs in the 21-27 financial framework. The other big reason behind our idea of having the metropolitan vision is that we have all been recently honored by Mrs. Elisa Ferreira, who, while speaking at the EMA conference, invited the metropolitan areas to cooperate with the European Commission. She mentioned 4 instruments or areas of such cooperation. First, using the post-pandemic recovery funds to improve the resilience of metropolitan areas. Second are the new cohesion programs. Third is the aforementioned new European Bauhaus initiative. And fourth is the European Urban Initiative, funding innovative actions. So we want to respond to that offer, we want to cooperate, we want to deepen the bonds between the metropolitan areas of Europe and the Commission. But we have to be prepared. That's why we have started working on the vision, but we don't want to produce another nicely composed set of sublime ideas. We want the vision to be as concrete, as substantiated as possible. We want to equip it with a proposition of an investment program. And we are very much convinced that such a program should be big and ambitious in terms of its scope, in terms of its costs, and in terms of its impact. So we are looking for projects which could fill this idea in. We would like to know whether the metropolitan areas and regions of Europe are planning or implementing some kind of big infrastructural projects which have such features as are climate neutral and energy prosuming, revitalize significant parts of existing city centers or develop some kind of new metropolitan centers, are connected to some kind of climate neutral significant metro regional transportation hubs, may be helpful in strengthening the rural dimension of their metropolitan regions and or serve their rural areas, especially in achieving their metropolitan food sovereignties. And last but not least, create mixed use spaces. We want our existing cities, rural areas, and metropolitan regions to evolve. We want to strengthen the bonds between their existing parts, elements, or layers, especially between their urban and rural dimensions. We want to shape them organically. We want the best of what we inherited in our cultures, traditions, values to flourish. We also want our metropolitan regions to be open, healthy, and friendly. But yes, of course, we are looking for some big actions, big projects. We all know the idea that small is beautiful. It has been very important in municipal strategies, spatial planning, and city management for several decades, and it should stay so. But sometimes I would say also big is beautiful and should be beautiful. In order to achieve big goals, we should have big projects with big impact. And I think the examples presented by Stuttgart, by Thomas, are excellent in this context. But in order to shape our vision, we have to analytically cope with some challenges, some big questions. So in the coming months, we would like to analyze such big questions as, first, how could the political systems of Europe evolve under the influence of the growing role of metropolitan areas and regions? What could be the consequences of this fact for the European Union? Second, is the scope of the challenges mentioned in the phrase resilient urban and rural transformation for a climate neutral future accurate, or maybe it should be broadened and include some other themes, other challenges? Third, what are the possible models of energetic transformation of Europe? Fourth, what kind of connections could we have between our metropolitan regions? I mean, in the context of the evolution of transportation systems, as well as the development of policies aimed at achieving various local sovereignties in several strategic fields, such as food, energetical, or digital sovereignties. And fifth question, where will the digital transition lead us to? We also want to keep balance between, on the one hand, strengthening the local resiliences, that is, building local sovereignties, and on the other hand, strengthening the metropolitan network, that is, the bonds, the links between our areas and regions. So this could be, I think, quite tricky. And now to conclude, we would like to work on the metropolitan vision for Europe 2050 with you, with all of you. We would like to kindly ask the whole intergroup to help us in this task. We would like to discuss the draft version of the vision when we will have it with you. Maybe we could also cooperate in shaping the particular elements of the vision. We are open to discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucas. That was sound and clear, I think. We will come back, of course, to these points, and maybe later on Lucas can repeat them, but let's say we will discuss on them because we're very curious to your views on that. And also, let's say, of course, the practical work and how to manage and how to achieve such a vision. And we don't want to spend years and years on a lot of paper. We want action soon. I would like now to give finally the word to Xavier Tiana. He's from the European Metropolitan Authorities, but of course also head of the international relations in the area Metropolitan di Barcelona, wonderful city. I think you don't have snow, Xavier. There you go.
Yes, thank you, Hen. First of all, I would like to thank President Jacob Mazu for his invitation, and also President and our leader in these issues in the European Parliament, Jan Olbrycht. We've met with him different times. Big hello from Ernest Maragall, Mr. Olbrycht from Barcelona. But let me start expressing on behalf of him our condolences for the passing of President Sassoli. I think it was a big clash, and our solidarity for the European Parliament family and all the great success for the new president, Roberto Metsola. So it was a big moment, a big difficulty. So today I'm here talking about this issue on behalf of the European Metropolitan Authorities Network, but I also represent the Barcelona metropolitan area, which is the unique metropolitan institution existing in Spain, not the unique metropolitan reality existing in Spain. So we all know that in this moment, all metropolitan areas are facing difficult moments, just trying to give an answer to how COVID is impacting in our realities. All metropolitan areas, we are introducing new policies, new programs, new investment plans, doing a big effort, sometimes just trying to provide services in some issues where we are not the tier of government responsible for that, for instance, in health. So just trying to give an answer to our citizens' needs. So sometimes we are doing what other tiers of government should do, but we are all going in the same direction. But at the same time, we are still facing some challenges that we were having before the pandemic and now which are adapted to the reality of the new pandemic. Let me share with you some of these challenges that I think that could be inspiring for this process of the 2050 vision. So some of these challenges that we are still having, some of them are about the limits of the metropolitan area, where the metropolitan area is starting, where the metropolitan area is ending. So we are still having these meetings, these debates. So at the same time, we want to strengthen our metropolitan institutions. And in those countries where we don't have these metropolitan institutions, we think that we need some kind of institutional schemes to provide these metropolitan realities. Lucas was mentioning the reality of ITI. ITI has been an excellent tool to create metropolitan dynamics. And today here, I invite you to consult the Metro ESPON project, which is a project where 8 metropolitan areas have been participating, led by the metropolitan area of Torino, where it shows perfectly how the cohesion policy has been interesting for some metropolitan realities, which is not the case of Barcelona. We are participating, but it was not the case of Barcelona. Some of the other challenges that we are having, keep on with the quality services. We are still want to provide quality services in terms of planning, in terms of waste, water management, housing, economy, unemployment, and so on and so forth. So we all know that some of the problems that our cities and metropolitan areas are facing need a metropolitan response. So air quality, housing, mobility. I mean, this is something that we cannot solve at the scale of a city. And at the same time, and I think this is an important issue, not only in Barcelona, I think it's also happening in other countries, there is a demand from economic and social stakeholders, not from the political side, economic and social stakeholders asking for a bigger metropolitan dimension, for a bigger metropolitan institutionalization. So European cities, if they are working alone, if they are working at the city level, I mean, they are small if they want to compete globally. So, and this is not a demand which is coming from experts and which is coming from the political side. It's a demand that is coming from companies. This is coming from the social sector. So more institutional governance in our territories. So Hem was mentioning about EMA. EMA is an initiative which started in 2015, where some mayors and political leaders met in order to discuss political matters. So in that meeting, we realized that we were, I would say, let me say it like this, underrepresented in the European scale. So I would say that not only we were underrepresented, we also saw that the European Union was not giving a concrete answer to this metropolitan reality. So things are changing. So thanks, for instance, to this group, to the Urban Intergroup, the same with the Committee of the Regions. The Committee of the Regions has produced some reports with a sensibilization which are sensible to this metropolitan reality. Elisa Ferreira, as it has been stated, she's also very supportive to that. We are very happy, and we need to study more about that. The new report produced by MEP Katalin Che on the challenges of urban areas in the post-COVID area, where there are many mentions on this metropolitan reality. So thank you. We are very happy on that. But we still think, and this is not an opinion for the Barcelona metropolitan area, I think it's a kind of global opinion, that still the response of the European institutions is still vague on this metropolitan reality. Sometimes we talk about functional urban areas, sometimes we talk about metropolitan regions. Sometimes we talk about these links between urban and rural, which is very necessary. But why don't you talk about metropolitan areas, metropolitan regions? So I think it's important to talk more in property about this issue. And things are changing, and we are happy on that, and we will support you on that. But I think we would need a clear vision on that. Let me finish by stressing some important issue that has been discussed among EMA members. EMA right now is representing more than 40 metropolitan areas. I would say that around 76, 78 million people representing these metropolitan areas. We have a very good report with networks like Metrex, Metropolis, also with Eurocities. But one of the works that we've been doing these last months was about the Recovery and Resilience Fund. So, you know, the biggest effort done ever by the European Union, the next generation with the multi-annual financial framework in a very crucial moment. So we've been following the process of preparing the national and recovery plans. We also produced a statement, different political meetings, because EMA is a political platform. And we realized that metropolitan areas have not been involved as cities in some cases, and also regions in the preparation of these national plans. Okay, the national plans are done. They are on the ground. They are prepared with the reforms and so on. But now is the moment of the execution of these national plans. And again, what we've seen with these national plans and their execution is that in some countries, metropolitan areas are excluded of them. In some countries, metropolitan areas are not allowed to participate in some calls for proposals. And we have very concrete examples. So this is why the EMA leaders decided to provide portfolio of projects, write a portfolio of metropolitan projects, which is going to be sent to European institutions, portfolio of projects that are ready to be implemented, which are very much aligned with the Recovery Fund. And we gather around 22 projects of 15 metropolitan areas. Just to give you some examples, for instance, the Amsterdam metropolitan region is developing an international hydrogen hub. We have in Brussels the expanding of the cycling network. We have in Greater Paris the building of the new Olympic Aquatic Center. The same in Thessaloniki, the transforming of the former military camp. Barcelona has a big strategy on 5G. So projects which are very much aligned with the Recovery Fund, and this is not a list of projects, also a list and explanation of projects amounting €4 billion, and we will share that with you. So example of projects ready to be implemented, but we don't know how to bring them in implementation using these funds. And one of the worrying things to this issue is that in some countries, some important countries, metropolitan areas have stated that they are not allowed to use these funds. So which is something very difficult to us to understand. So sorry for introducing this issue, but that was a very concrete issue, which has to be aligned with this 2050, 2030 vision. From our side, from the EMA network, we are able to work with the metrics. With the same with the urban intergroup, Mr. Ulrich, Mrs. Keller, count on us. So we've met with you. We are able to work with you, and well, and thank you for the for the invitation. I'm here to share with you any other thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavi. I think that was a very clear language, and we fully support that. I mean, so in that sense, I think we speak with one voice. Let's say maybe to finish, we have actually also on the initiative of Pascal Smet, the State Secretary of the Capital Region of Brussels, we will see a sort of meeting of the networks will be on the 16th of February in Brussels, where we also want to discuss, let's say, how we as networks, let's say, can cooperate better, more clear, let's say, and maybe even specialize on certain issues. I mean, we have our differences, but in the end, it's not so much the networks that are important, but of course, it's the effect of the initiatives we let's say we promote. And I think what Xavi said about the project, let's say one of our big things is also to learn from those projects and to make sure that they are available, let's say, for everyone, for every metropolitan region in Europe, for every let's say politician in Europe, to make sure that that you simply can copy it. So we really believe in this. Let's say in the sort of followership, we call it an excellent followership for people to sort of not so much copy paste. I mean, that's not always possible, but on the other hand, to learn from the principles from those projects and to see if we can implement them elsewhere. We really think that that's also a way to accelerate on actions, and that's I think in a way the importance of that project. We are let's say trying to gather the same kind of things from our network. Lucas is working on that. Let's say, of course, with the whole network. So in that sense, we think we get a fantastic library, but also a sort of examples of works that are already undertaken that are more or less on the table, but indeed needs a more institutionalized, more funding, let's say, but mainly also the awareness that at that level, let's say, is also the level where you can really solve things. So that's where I would like to end myself as well. I would like to ask actually Jan Olbrecht maybe, because you know, let's say the members of the Urban Intergroup best, to see if you maybe have your own, let's say, conclusions, or maybe the first things you have noted from this first half of the meeting, and also to see what kind of questions, let's say, are maybe relevant for you, where you are able, let's say, as Urban Intergroup to intervene. Maybe answer, let's say, and we are very keen, let's say, later on about 10:45 to also discuss about possible other partners, also of course your views on that, and then of course, you know, how can we really make this practical, how can we really make this collaboration work. So maybe Jan Olbrecht, please, if you could respond maybe as a first person, but also maybe put out some issues to your colleagues.
Yes, thank you. And I see that one of our colleagues from the Intergroup, who is much more involved in the new European Bauhaus, Marcos Ross-Semper, is with us. So I hope that Marcos will take the floor and to react. But my first reaction, what I was trying to note, what is the what is important for all of us to fight for. First, of course, I was very interested in finding the answer for the works made in Helsinki, because there were a lot of experts working on the decarbonization of the heating in the city. I didn't find the information. What is the result? I mean, what is the conclusion? Is there any idea how to decarbonize the heating in Helsinki? I hope that we will have this information, because it's symbolically very, very, very important. It was also quite important for me that when we speak about the long-term strategy concerning the climate, energy, etc. So it's not only about concrete elements concerning the technological elements of energy, but there's also the much broader problem concerning the, for example, the modernization of the railway transport. This is about urban planning, the developing the green infrastructure, and much more put to the open spaces. I think in general the new approach to architecture and in general the city planning. I think that this kind of thinking is absolutely necessary to show that when someone declares the climate neutrality in 2050 in general, and the concrete cities 2030, I think for many people, including my colleagues in the parliament, should be very clear that the whole strategy is absolutely horizontal. It requires different approaches and different policies at the same time. So I think it's much broader than just using the new technology, for example, for heating, which is basic, because as we said, the heating is causing the majority of the CO2 production. Of course, it's very interesting to what extent, and I think this information about hydrogen is important for many cities in Europe. What are the results of the pilot projects? What are the costs of it? And what about the feasibility of all this? I think that's why this kind of information can be very useful. What I find interesting is just this information which I got during the first part of our meeting. They are not a very typical PowerPoint presentation. I mean, which is in fact, PowerPoint presentation is much more the promotion than exchange of experience. But I think that what's really important is to a very serious debate: what can be done, what cannot be done, what is the more efficient, less efficient, etc. We have we have years of experience of cooperation with such experts like Ivan Tosic, which I see here among the members, who several times we discussed. I mean, let's be concrete and let's make the exchange of the experience, good experience and bad experience. I think this is very important, because when I go to different congresses, after the 5th presentation of successes, I have the impression that I have to leave because this is not for me. I mean, this is because I don't think that the mayors, they need to learn how to make the promotion. I know they know very well how to make the promotion, but the real exchange of experience, showing what can be done and what doesn't work very well, is extremely difficult. And of course, it's or extremely expensive. This is very, very important. So that's why I find this presentation, which has been today, very, very concrete, very interesting, and not only as I said, the promotion of the successes. The second element is the question of the common approach together with the European institutions. This was also our colleague Xavier, which we know for some years, and of course having the context working on the metropolitan areas. You're absolutely right that there is not a real clear response from the European institutions. Let's be very frank. Let's be very frank. There is no clear response, neither from the Commission nor from the Parliament. And I think why? Because first, this is the question of, let's go from experience and tradition. And of course, everybody got used to think about there is the cities and rural areas, and big cities and small cities. And of course, if it's big cities, the first reaction is, okay, they will manage. They have enough money. So it's not especially important to help them, which is not true, because the main problems are not in the small cities now. The big problems are now in big cities and their surroundings in metropolitan areas. When you say metropolitan, you will not finish the sentence, and some people from the rural areas in the parliament. So no, stop it. I mean, metropolitan is about metropolitan cities. So we cannot just concentrate on the big cities, etc. The way of understanding of metropolitan areas is not very broad. It's not very broad, and it's not very broad neither from the Commission nor from the Parliament. Let's be very frank. Some of the cities, they don't want it. Some of the cities, they are not very, because this is reducing their importance. Only the cities, in terms of local authorities, which are very broad-minded, they understand that working in a city requires absolutely to work with the rural areas around. So with the metropolitan areas, this is the way to success, and not to be against. So I think that, but you know very well this word of local authorities, and it's not always the case. Someone is just seeing this as a kind of competition, a competition and reducing the power. So I think that this is one thing. The element, I shouldn't tell it as a politician with the political correctness, but you know very well that our Commissioner for Regional Policy is not the best fighter for metropolitan areas and for the cities in general, for the big cities. So this is not her favorite approach, even if she repeats that we are for it. But we should do everything to show that it works. That's why what has been said, the ITIs, or so-called the cooperation, it works, because this is the cooperation which works. I mean, the necessary cooperation. So I think that there is a lot to be done. And I think that to show what is metropolitan regions or metropolitan areas about. And of course, for this, we need the people from rural. We need these people from rural areas to support it. They should take part in this debate, because they are, as some of you remember, we as Intergroup, we took the example from Germany, from Ruben. It was the German idea of rural areas, together with Urban, and we created the pilot project or the preparatory actions calling Urban inside, to give the money to the European Commission to prepare the handbook how to make the cooperation between rural and urban. And you know, the OECD made it. And there is a handbook, how to work between rural and urban, which is paid with the money we arrange as Intergroup. Okay, and there was very interesting conferences about it. The question, what about the real practice? And the real practice is not working very well. Why? Because the question is, who is responsible? We have commissioner. Commissioner for Regional Policy or Commissioner for Agriculture. So because they say 2 policies, 2 funds, 2 different DGs, 2 different administration, and they don't work together. So I think that there is a lot of work to do, but I think what I suggest to Metrox, to organize more and more meetings with the people from rural areas, For example, when they fight for smart villages, they see it as a competition to smart cities. So they are fighting for special programs, special money, etc., for smart villages. Whereas it's, I think, what is logic? To make it smart in the metropolitan areas together. This is, I mean, logic, and not to make smart villages and smart cities. I mean, it requires a cooperation. So this is my first conclusion. So it was absolutely clear that RRF, so recovery plan, and the national recovery plans, this is a typical example. Why it's typical example? Because this is different money, different solution, different strategy. Everything should be quicker. Everything should be time limited. And that's why even the consultation in very many member states with the local authorities was very symbolic. If not none of consultation at all. So whereas the money which goes to the through the national plans is a kind of the dotations which is no national contribution. It's just 100% from European money, which is for the local authorities extremely important. But it's very clear that the recovery plan is much more center-oriented in many countries, and not only the metropolitan areas, but very often even not the city are involved in this plan. So this is also the reality. But the plan is not the question is about the division between the cohesion policy and recovery plan. This is also important. But this is different DG, by the way. Recovery plan is not DG Regio. DG recovery plan is completely separate and it's completely working on different. Whereas the problem of energy, climate, etc., is one of the main elements of recovery plan, of the national recovery plan. So I think that it's absolutely important to show. And what I would like to suggest, because the strategy of the Commission is not to show the plans as long as they are not agreed, but the moment they are agreed, they are public. So I think for you, for metrics, it can be very interesting, and for Emma, to look at the plan who are published. I mean, who are the beneficiaries? Who is acting as a partner in the plan? Because there are only 4 plans which are not accepted, including in my country, but and Ivan Tosic country, and they are not. But the others are public. So I think that is very important to look at it, to analyze, and to show where are the cities and metropolitan areas. Just to summarize, I think that this is extremely important. But but let's be very, very clear. The situation is not very friendly to the metropolitan areas now. Not friendly because first, the people, they don't understand what is going on. They are not interested. They think that they are defending their position like they were today. But I think it's more and more important to show that the much broader thinking, metropolitan thinking, urban and rural together is absolute solution. But I hope the next meeting will be with the rural, and they should support it, because if they don't participate and they don't support, many of them will see that this is just a way to exclude them. Thank you, and I don't know if our colleague from the Parliament, Marcos Rossempere, can take the floor and see what he thinks. Of course, as also the person very much involved in Bauhaus, new European Bauhaus. Marcos, are you with us?
Hello, thank you, Jan, for giving me the floor. And also thank you very much to Metrex and Ima for being here with us today, as well as to the representative of the cities that we have had with us today, Stuttgart, Helsinki, Barcelona, who I think you are working really well to ensure that their metropolitan areas or your metropolitan areas manage to address the challenges of the transition to climate neutral regions. I fully agree with what has been said during this meeting. As Fabian pointed out, Europe is the most urbanized area in the world, and that means that most of the environmental, social, cultural, and educational challenges are concentrated in cities. But however, we must not forget that we have very big difference between member states. For example, in Belgium, we have the 98% of urbanized people living in urbanized areas, but in Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia is only almost 55%, and the European average is 75%. So, in fact, there is another one main difference I think is very important in countries such as my country, as Spain. We have one of the biggest, the highest population concentration rates in Europe, but there is a duality. We have, on one hand, a big concentration of inhabitants, economy and services in the metropolitan areas, but on the other hand, we have a very big amount of emptiness in rural areas, and this leads to a double challenge. We have to ensure the sustainability, but also to ensure the inclusion. People who live in rural areas should be included in the economy, the society, the dynamics of the whole country. And the only way is about creating real metropolitan areas, as Jan has. I fully agree with the things that Jan has recently said. Therefore, I am glad that the issue of the new European Bauhaus, which has been mentioned at the beginning of the meeting by Mr. Mazur, Metrex president, following his meeting with Elisa, came up several times in this meeting this morning. The new European Bauhaus is and will remain, I hope so, one of the key instruments to achieve more sustainable, more inclusive, and more beautiful cities. These are the three main axes, the three main principles of the new European Bauhaus, and they must be applied in metropolitan areas and rural areas, two spaces with very different characteristics. We, in our report, are going to put the focus on this duality, rural areas, metropolitan areas, and the need for connect both, because if we don't connect rural territory with urban or metropolitan areas, we are not doing a good inclusion project. The main four objectives of the European Bauhaus, especially aimed at the metropolitan areas, are reconnection with nature, based on a perspective centered on life and not only on the human. It is important the role that education and culture play here, but reconnection with nature means not only putting green areas inside the city, but how to connect the city with the surrounding territory. And this is a very important issue. The second one is recovering the sense of belonging, encouraging solidarity in spaces accustomed to individualism. This is a second very important issue. The third one is guarantee inclusion by prioritizing solutions that are accessible and affordable for all. Very important to highlight the objective of avoiding spatial segregation, something very visible, unfortunately, in today's metropolitan areas, and guarantee the connection with rural areas. And the fourth main axe is to ensure the sustainability, to improve the use of resources and avoid waste, something we also see in European metropolitan areas. We have to arrive to a real circular life of circular cycle of the products. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jan Olbrich, and not only for being at the head of our urban intergroup, who is doing fantastically, but also for his excellent draft opinion from the budget committee for the new European Bauhaus report, for which I am glad to be the main rapporteur of this INI. I think that only well-planned funding, if we have a well-planned funding, we can achieve this initiative really benefits our cities, our citizens, and transform the built environment and the environment around them. And I think the work that the budget committee has done with Jan at the leading of this opinion for our report is very well structured. I think it will be very useful for us in drafting in writing the first draft that we are going to present in the following month of February. So be aware that be connected, because you are going to have a lot of news about New European Bauhaus, because we are starting the process to write and to address and to adopt the INI report from the Parliament, which will be very important to say to the Commission, oh, this is the opinion of the European Parliament. You have to take into account our opinion, because it is going to be adopted, I hope so, because I am the rapporteur, by the majority of the Parliament. And this initiative has to take into account rural areas, urban areas, and the connection between metropolitan areas and the rural areas. So I think it's very important to be very active on these 4-5 months in which we are going to be full working on this INI report. Thank you very much for this meeting. Greetings from Spain to all the cities that have participated. I am open to your questions if you want, and of course open to your ideas and participation during the next months in the INI report of New European Bauhaus. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Yes, so colleagues, the first information is that in coming weeks, if we don't want to have the new European Bauhaus as a flagship, and like all the ships, it can appear and next go to the horizon and it's gone. So I think that if you want to make it practical, I think it's important to contact Marcos, and I think to contact and to do something very practical from the new European Bauhaus, because if not, we will have a beautiful strategy, which after 2 or 3 years will go. So I think that's why it's very, very important for all of you. And before giving the floor back to Hank, I'd ask Fabienne if she wants to put your something remarks now, because I will give the moderation to Hank back.
I just wanted to thank all of you for your experience, sharing experience. Thank Marcos and Jan for their involvement in the Batch Committee in this important subject, and say that as an experienced politician, I see this opposition between cities and rural areas as a terrible thing. I identify the fact that there are many mayors of rural areas, many parliamentary people elected from that areas as compared to the cities. So we have a number issue, and it's a no solution issue. It's a bad way to approach issues like environment. We have to do things in rural areas and in cities. And as Jan said, we have to develop this rural-urban concept, but it's never ending. We have to talk about it all the time. And more so because in the COVID crisis, we had, at least in France, quite an important movement of people living in urban areas deciding to live definitely in more rural sectors. So we always have to manage the two issues at the same time and never oppose them. But the place of the cities must be always expressed again, because otherwise the rural areas are taking the powers in some way. So I think this issue is being addressed very clearly by Jan, and I think it's central to be in a constructive way and to handle the issues commonly as issues for our society. We don't have to leave, as Marco said, rural areas abandoned, but a lot of people are living in our cities and they deserve a strong involvement. And this is, in terms of tons of CO2, the main subject. So this can be, we have to really address this issue. And I love the word of rural ban, dear Jan, and to push that idea that it's together that we can find a solution. And that city centers are really important to take into account and never to oppose to. So thank you for all of you, and I give you back the floor, Jan.
Yes, we have another half an hour, Hank, and I think that you can moderate some debate, and of course the next presentation of the Secretary General. So Hank, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you for this interesting discussion so far. And I think indeed, as Jan said, I think we should have much more of this debate and not only talk about nice solutions and fantastic, smooth presentations of things that are good, but also, let's say, express to each other the difficulties. And one of our guests was Professor Valeria Fedeli. Unfortunately, she had to go, but we have been in touch with her for many projects. She has been leading on ESPON projects, and one of them was, let's say, one in Italy where there was a very strong focus on the combination of urban and rural. I mean, there was no distinction, and it was about the area between, let's say, roughly Milano and Bologna, but everything in between. And it was very much about the perception of people, that people have, let's say, on all kind of issues. And interestingly, of course, where people live indeed in these sort of rural areas, they, on the other hand, of course, use all kind of urban services, whether it's on health or schooling or you name it. It depends, of course, also on the the phase in life that you are in. I think that project was really interesting to have followed, have been the opportunity to follow her, and it was, let's say, with our members. In that sense, I think there is also quite a lot of positive development out there, and she literally said, and I think I should agree. So a point to me, if you like, that sometimes also the EU institutions seem to sort of almost establish or seem to sort of strengthen the opposition between urban and rural because of its, let's say, institutions. And of course, let's say with policies and with money, it's always often that you have to do sort of, you know, it's 1 or 0, it's yes or no, it's black or white, but to sort of really integrate thinking about those issues, to really integrate the thinking, I think is really one of the most difficult things. So integrative thinking is easily said, but not easily done. I see Adriana Mai, our very esteemed colleague from Lombardia region and a board member in Metrics, has raised her hand. And I think she is very experienced in when it comes to let's say the contrast between urban and rural issues. Adriana, please open your microphone.
Yes, I opened it. Well, a very quick and reaction by instinct. The first aspect that I can see, I used to be responsible for Lombardy region, which is a wider area than the metropolitan area. And seeing all the territory, urban and rural, we see how important is the cooperation between the two territories on many, many issues. And I was remembering a meeting we had in ESPON some years ago, where we were discussing on getaways. The gateway approach, we discussed on metropolitan areas as gateways for all the territory, not only on mobility, but also as a gateway for innovation. and for services to all the territory. Just to make an example, we are preparing for the Olympic Games in Italy in 2026. And I don't think we could have had this if we didn't have the mountain areas, of course, but Milano with an international airport and all the international contacts that the metropolitan area has. And that means that we are preparing a master plan from including Milano and the mountain areas, all the path for the Olympic Games, including all the territory. This is one aspect, and one aspect relevant is valorizing the ecosystem services. So we have a big problem on the population on the rural areas, on certain rural areas, but this means a problem for all the territory about natural risk, for example, but also for environmental quality in the whole. I won't get in detail in this. And the third aspect that triggered something to me is that, of course, the problem of metropolitan areas to be legal entity is in itself is something that we should address urgently, because if they are legal entity, they can apply for European funds. But if they don't have a legal status, I don't see how they could directly apply for European funds. In Italy, we have a national plan. One part of the mainstream European funds are especially dedicated to metropolitan areas. And in the last programming period, since the metropolitan cities were not yet fully established, the money went to the main city in the metropolitan areas. But now we can have it to the metropolitan city as a whole.
Thank you, Adriana. That was some three interesting points, I think, to share indeed, especially also the last one, big change, and maybe in that sense exemplar to for other countries, I would say as well. Ivan Tocic, you also raised your hand, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the discussion, especially raising the urban-rural split. And I have to just support Jan Olbricht that if we don't talk about that, then it is problematic for us to go forward. DG Agri developed the Rural Vision 2040, which in my opinion is a threatening example of a total split, silo thinking within the European Commission. I saw a presentation about the Rural Vision where there was no one word mentioned about urban, about cities. Rural areas are taken in general without making any difference between them. Although we know that there are rural settlements close to large cities, close to medium cities, close to smaller cities, and we also have some deep rural areas in the EU. So if we don't consider this differentiation, how can we develop a rural, a normal strategy for urban development? On the other hand, there are also some signs that large cities are not really considering the surrounding settlements. They are now talking about an affordable housing crisis, and they are talking about building new social housing within the city limits, and they don't consider at all that also for housing, the metropolitan strategy would be needed based on transit-oriented development, finding out where are the places where housing can be developed in accordance with public transport issues. And finally, there is a political thing here, unfortunately. There are a few countries in Europe where the national policies are now quite against the large cities, as the political support for them comes from small cities and from rural areas. in these countries, there is no thinking, or at least on the national level, it is very limited about metropolitan areas, because this would give back, in their view, some political support to large cities. So I think that an EU support would be needed, and this EU support should concentrate on the enforcement of national strategies for urban-rural linkages. The national level should develop such strategies, taking into account the national specificities in the countries, but it should emphasize the needed link, and not only for metropolitan cities, but also for medium and small cities, who are often market centers for surrounding rural areas. So I think that the EU support is very much needed, and also we should do something about this total split in the institutional structure. DG Regio against DG Agri, this is impossible. I mean, we should overcome that in some way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan, and clear as always. And I think that's something that we should absolutely take with us in let's say, the work to come. It is not, let's say, sometimes you would like to depoliticize things rather than leave it, let's say, to this sort of every 4 years a different approach. And maybe as last one, I see Peter Austin from Norway, Oslo, raise his hand, please, Peter.
Thank you. Just to follow on from the comments, I very warmly support what you suggested, Jan. I think I can see from it's a criticism of the way we've been working as well. We've not been good enough at involving the voices from the rural communities. On the other hand, in our area, as you may know, we have previously had a very good working relationship with our neighboring region, which has represented the other half of the metropolitan area, including the rural communities. We've had a sort of 50-50 split in funding for infrastructure and dividing services. After the surrounding region became expanded during a local government reform 2 years ago, the cooperation is now more of a challenge. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of questions being asked now, and I think this is because the deep rural communities' voices don't feel that they're represented in the metropolitan discussions we've been having before. The next point is following up from what Fabienne said. I think what is really important is the urban-rural challenge that we had before. I was also involved in the Ruurban project that you mentioned, Jan, and the discussions with OECD. It was very interesting to follow that, and I was very aware at that stage the big divisions, really almost a polarization. We didn't use that word at the time, but this is now a common phrase in describing the politics in Europe. And I think the challenge that we face now then is probably increased as a result of COVID. COVID has emphasized a lot of the social and economic divisions that we had before in Europe. And to the extent that these divisions had a spatial context, which were very often for the urban-rural lines, I think these challenges are probably increased as well. It's got something to do with people moving out of the city, but I think it's much bigger than that. I think it's got a lot to do with identity and the politics that is following on from that. This is a challenge that is going to work its way all the way up to the European Parliament and through the parties that we see across Europe. I think this is a much bigger challenge than we actually realize. So I think that the need for getting a good dialogue at the policy level between the urban and the rural interests and the representatives is absolutely essential. As Pietro has mentioned, from the Eurocities side, we produced a statement to the DG Agri rural vision, urging them to take note of the need for an urban-rural dialogue. We also pointed out the need for linking up at the highest levels between politicians, between the institutions at the European level, at our national levels as well. If we don't get that dialogue working, then we've got problems, and we'll always be stuck, as you said, Jan, with metropolitan being defined by the cities, which is missing the point that we're trying to make. And obviously the example that Ivan gave about affordable housing has to be seen at the metropolitan scale. This is one case where I think there's a lot to be gained by trying to resolve things at that scale. So this is a very interesting discussion, and I hope it'll have some effect in developing both this metropolitan Metropolitan Vision that you're developing in Metrex, but also the work that we're doing at other networks and the places where we're working. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. I think we are, let's say, all these points are interesting, and of course we know the challenges. I think, and that's why I would like to give the last word, at least in this part, to Lukáš, and then look at, let's say, some practical steps forward, because we have, of course, a lot of challenges. We have a lot of problems. I would say I live myself in a very rural area, and to be honest, it's interesting to see how that is evolving in France, and even in France you see difference between one and the other rural area depending where you are. So there are, in that sense, different approaches, also even on the impact of COVID. So let's see. We will come back to that. I would like to give the word to Lukáš, let's say, to briefly respond, and then we go to Felipe Ferreira from Lisbon for some practical steps also, and then we will draw it to an end. So Lukáš, please.
Hey, thank you for your comments. I don't know if I can conclude, but I will say a few words shortly. We are, of course, aware that the Metropolitan agenda is not too trendy nowadays in some institutions, and I mean European institutions as well as the national ones. For example, in Poland, as Mr. President of the Intergroup perfectly knows, we dream about passing some metropolitan bills through our parliament, the bills which would create metropolitan institutions and give them appropriate financing in some areas in Poland, including our Wrocław metropolitan area. But as you perfectly know, passing such bills through the current parliament is impossible. On the other hand, I have to confess that in Wrocław we have a new dilemma. Should we promote our metropolitan agenda, or maybe we should rather focus on the regional dimension? I mean, the dimension of the whole region of Lower Silesia, with Wrocław, the city of Wrocław, as not only its formal capital, but also its natural leader and the hub of several networks and systems. These two dimensions, the metropolitan and the regional one, are completely different. On the other hand, I fully agree that the main reason for the weakening of the position of metropolitan agenda is what most of you have already said, that the metropolitan agenda is usually understood as the agenda of the large cities. We all will have to bring rural areas on board, so I fully agree with that. We will have to look for partners in such places and organizations. So I think I could recommend to all of us, especially to us as Metrex, EMA, and other networks, to find such partners, maybe such networks, and to negotiate our metropolitan vision with them. I also think that very much depends on the definition of metropolitan region and of its delimitation. Where exactly are those rural areas? Do we speak about the countryside close to the large city, or do we also include some far peripheral areas which are very interesting from the point of view of the inhabitants of the cities? And I will once again give an example of the region of Lower Silesia. This is the case of the southern part of our region, with mountain areas, health resorts, and so on. That's where many people from bigger cities have their so-called second homes, or even move there permanently. So this is another question. Is it a part of the metropolitan region or no? But I leave the topic, of course, as a question for now. And Henk asked me to say a few words about what's next with the work of the vision. So in February, we are supposed to have a meeting of various metropolitan networks in Brussels. And I think it will be a good occasion to also discuss the idea of the vision with other networks. I also understand, Henk, that we will have a meeting with ESPON in February. So this is another important potential partner of that work. We also asked, a couple of days ago, we asked the members of Metrex for propositions of some big infrastructural projects which may be instrumental in achieving the goals of the main EU policies. And so we hope for some interesting feedback. And I would add that in the coming month, we will analyze the reports and documents which may be useful for the vision. And I would like to thank you. I'm very grateful, and we are all very grateful for all the links you have pasted today in our chat box. So we will check them out, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. Thank you, Luca. Sorry, now trying to mix you up. Indeed, as you said, I'm even thinking about a lot of Dutch people nowadays going to Lapland in Finland, all the way up north for their holidays. Sometimes I know they should also go there in summer, I think, and realize what's life there, even without having a nice skiing holiday. Maybe some words from Felipe Ferreira. He is here because Felipe has also, let's say, he's working very closely together with us. I mean, their member, Metropolitan Region of Lisbon, is member of Metrix, but of course also very active in EMA and in Eurocities. I would like to ask Lisbon and Felipe to a little bit give us a lead into the next coming months, I would say. Felipe.
Okay, thank you, Henk. Thank you, everybody. First of all, some words to the Metrix and especially our president, Jakob. Of course, a special thank to the members of Urban Intergroup and of course EMA. I'm going to present just 3 or 4 slides of a PowerPoint regarding the process of building our 2050 Metropolitan Vision for Europe, Resilient Urban and Rural Transformation. Of course, the title, as already says it all. It is an urban and rural transformation that we are building on, and not just an urban/metro approach. First of all, our main goals regarding our Metropolitan Vision. We want to position Metropolitan level as a EU governance level regarding cohesion policy. We want to showcase the metro areas as focal points for the resolution of social complex problems. Of course, we want to showcase the metro areas policy solutions, and of course, an integrated metro and rural solutions will be very, very, very useful, I would say. Foster the co-creation with European Union stakeholders of a new generation of policy instruments. Now is the time to build a new generation of policy instruments regarding the next 20, 30 years of European Union. I think this is a very, very ambitious, but also a very doable goal. Of course, contribute to develop the new integrated approach regarding EU twin transitions, and contribute to European Union global leadership regarding the twin transitions. For us, Metrix, and of course, within our Metropolitan Vision, this is very important to contribute to enhance the importance and the visibility of European Union global leadership. Of course, we are competing. We are competing with America, we are competing with China, we are competing with other geopolitical unities. And for us, it is very important to pinpoint that Metropolitan level must contribute to enhance European Union global leadership. Well, 5 priorities regarding our implementation. First of all, and of course, this is a fine example of our #1 priority, raise political awareness regarding metro level. Second priority, metro actors engagement. Of course, we have Espor Metro, we have EMA, we have Metrix, but it is very important to put all of these working together and to engage the metro level actors. Third priority, it is territorial implementation. I'm sorry, just to. And for priority #4, a new generation of EU instruments, and priority #5, metering and evaluation. I'm sorry. And just to finalize what we want to achieve. First of all, a 2050 Metropolitan Vision for Europe that is based in a multi-approach process, multi-level and multi-actor. How we are going to do that? First of all, raising political awareness. We want to talk and dialogue and work with European Union Parliament, European Union Commission, Committee of Regions, and the national governments It is very important to put metro level in the political agenda, not just at the technical practitioners' agenda. Second of all, the engagement of the actors at metro level, as Henk has already said, and Jakob and Lucas and the other intervenants in this meeting. We want to work with lots of people. We want to work with European Union networks like EMA. It's here, and a special and warm congratulations to Javi and their excellent work that we're doing at EMA and Metropolitan and Barcelona metropolitan area. But we want to work also with another metro areas. We want to work with NGOs, and we want to work with academia. It is very important to put academia on board. We need to have the best and bright minds working with us to pinpoint and showcase the relevance and importance of the metro level and how metro level can contribute to solve some very, very difficult social problems. The third approach, it is a territorial implementation, and it is a dialogue with other levels. We must talk with the local authorities. For instance, Lisbon metropolitan area, we have almost 3 million people, but we are composed by 18 municipalities. We must talk with that local authorities, and we must talk with the authorities that are in between us and the central governments. For instance, the regional authorities. It is very important to show them that we are motivated, and we are here to help drafting new solutions. The metro level is not here to confront the other policy levels. No, we have our own natural policy framework that we want to develop in cooperation with other territorial levels. Fourth, new generation of EU instruments. It is very important to draft a new generation of EU instruments. For instance, we have some examples in Europe. I'm seeing here Adriana May from Italy, for instance, and drafting an operation problem for metro areas all around Europe. For instance, these are examples. These examples, they are not written in stone, but they are just examples of what we can do together. For instance, draft a new generation of operational programs, metro areas, create a urban policy instrument, a policy instrument that can put together the urban and the rural dimensions of the metro level, because this is very important to pinpoint. Metropolitan areas are not just, they have not just an urban dimension. They have also a rural dimension, and they are interfaces with the rural regions, because of that, I think it is very important to pinpoint that complementarity that we need to enhance and to develop. Third, our third proposition, it's the drafting of a metropolitan capacity building initiative. A little bit like Equal 20 years ago. I don't think everybody remember Equal. I think that was a very, very special program. I think we could draft with the European Commission, European Parliament, and so on, a new initiative that enhance the metropolitan capacity building. I think that was very important. And to finalize, more technical question, but also an important question, it is regarding monitoring and evaluation. As per Metro, Lisbon was in that project. As per Metro has made a recommendation, creation of a EU Metro Observatory. We want to help develop this European Union Metro Observatory, and I think this is critical to develop this observatory. And of course, and this is regarding evaluation framework, we want to put territorial impact assessment and as one of the mainstream evaluation frameworks, because it is very important that the evaluation is aligned with the policy objectives. And since we are drafting a new generation of EU instruments, we are drafting a 2050 strategy. We are thinking 30 years ahead. I think this is important to align politics, policy, monitoring, and evaluation all in a very rational and I think a very a very dedicated approach regarding metropolitan level. In a nutshell, 2050 Metropolitan Vision for Europe, working in a multi-level, in a multi-actor process. And the key word here, and the key word here, it is process. Nothing is written in stone. A process that will work with, collaborate with, listen to. Nothing is finalized. This is just the first step of what I think it will be a very, very bright future for the metro level in Europe. Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Felipe. Well, that's clear language, I would say. Indeed, nothing is written in stone. We need this process to grow. Let's say with not so much us, but also the people after us, because after all, I don't know about you, but we will be gone in let's say 10 years time or a decade, and there will be new people as well. So we need to also involve actually the next generation. Maybe that's something that should be put in the presentation of Felipe as well. The next generation through all those levels, through all those actions that are mentioned there, because it's important to get them on board, to get them enthusiastic. I see it's 11 o'clock, actually past that. So I would like to conclude, because I can imagine people have other agendas as well. So maybe Jan and Jakub, as two colleagues, I think maybe you can take over now and finalize. From my side, thank you very much to everyone. We will surely approach you again, and we will come back to you with some very practical steps. So thank you, and see you next time.
Yes, I don't think that we need a special symbolic comments at the end. I would just like, for example, I'm very happy that I met you, etc., which is true. But I think that what I would just draw the attention, please look at the chat, because I think it was interesting remarks on the chat, and can be very useful for all of us. And of course, I think that all of us from the Intergroup, because I think that Fabienne is still with us, we are ready. We are ready to cooperate, and we of course we know it will not be very easy. We turned a little bit from the climate elements to the functioning of metropolitan regions in general. But I think that it's very clear that we want to take seriously the problem of climate and energy, etc. It should be done on a very, very horizontal way. And I noticed the interesting idea of Eurocities and the interesting idea of Regio. I hope it's a positive sign that if Regio starts with the documents, maybe they will find a way to cooperate with Agri, DG Agri, which I hope it will be one day the proposal. So thanks again. And I think, okay, let's work and let's be in touch.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have two dimensions of this meeting, because one was on the chat and we exchanged so many information. So let's keep in touch, because we have a lot of work to be done very soon. As we said, the time is now. So thank you, all of you, all speakers, but all the attenders, for your presence, for your impact on this meeting. I'm very happy that we all do agree about principles. And now is the time for us to act and write some crucial sentences in the stone, Felipe, for you. Thank you very much. Stay safe and be in touch very soon.
Okay. Thank
you to all of you.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.